Hey, expediting with Lucy. Driving east through Kentucky right now. And my editor slash cousin slash pain in my rear end suggested maybe we branch off a little bit from talking about expediting and maybe discuss some other things that might be interesting or entertaining. And I'm driving along here with endless hours to think. And thinking about your upbringing. Everybody's is different. You might have grown up on a farm. You could have been a military brat. Maybe your parents owned a grocery store. Everybody's got their, their unique upbringing and their personal experience. My dad was an airline pilot, so we grew up, my brother and I grew up at the airport, literally. And as a member of the airline family, you can travel for free. You are considered a non-revenue passenger or a non-RAV, and you fly space available. So when you would go on a trip, you would get to the airport, you'd run up a ticket counter, and you have, the first words out of your mouth would be, "I'm a non-RAV," and then you'd ask about flights and availability. And if there was a paying passenger, the paying passenger always won, and you paced out. And during peak travel season, it was sometimes hard to get a seat, and there would be other non-RAVs trying to jump on the plane with you. Now, back in the 70s, and I'm being generous when I say this, security at the airport was a joke. I mean, if two preteens can figure out the security systems at the airport, chances are other people could have. And just to give you an example of how weak the security systems were back then, today you've got authorized personnel only, and you can't go in here, and they pull out that little electronic key card and they swipe it, and then the door unlocks. Well, back in the 70s, they didn't have those. They had this giant round brass lock with push buttons all around the outside with a little chicken out in the middle. And we quickly found out that every airport in the country, the combination was 135. So my brother and I, when we'd be stuck at an airport waiting on a flight, you'd spend 6, 7, 8 hours in an airport waiting to go somewhere. Because back then, you could, I don't know if they do this anymore, but back then, if you had a parent, like a divorced parent, if you had one on each end, you could stick a kid on a plane and they'd fly wherever, and then the parent on the other side pick them up. And I'm not talking 15-year-olds, I'm talking like 6-year-olds. You could literally do that. And my parents were divorced, so my brother and I bounced around between them all the time as non-RAVs. But again, you were competing for empty seats, and you were competing for seating against other non-RAVs. And being that we had access to the entire airport, I would rather not go into details of some of the stuff my brother and I got involved in, stuck our nose into, that was none of our business, because my mother's crazy and she's on the edge, and this would be that one little nudge to finish her off, so I'm going to let that go. Well, let's just say we could pretty much go anywhere in that airport anytime we wanted, under any circumstances. Now, for the non-RAVs going to an airplane, it was first come, first serve. So you have 3 non-RAVs in front of you, and there's 3 seats. They get up, you're aced out, and you're waiting for hours for the next flight. Now, if you take an overhead look at an airport, a big airport, you have, like a bicycle wheel, there's the hub, and then there's the spokes. And the spokes are, concourse A, concourse B, and then the hub's down here. So what would happen is, usually, you would land at an airport and they would taxi you up to this concourse, and you'd have to march all the way down around. It took a while, you've been there, and to get to like an airplane on the other end. And we were on a flight during the Christmas season this one time, and I think we went to Salt Lake City because my dad flew for Western Airlines, and Western Airlines hub was Salt Lake City, and I think they got bought out in '87. They were long gone. And we were sitting, space available, the plane was packed, and we were sitting in the very rear, so we were the last people to get off the plane. And we, like we're saying, we taxied here, and we needed to be over here. And there were other non-RAVs, so we could hear the conversations of them. And these people, you get out, and you got to go as fast as you can to go around up the other concourse. It's 15, 20-minute hike. And we were like, my brother and I were like the last guys off the plane. And being that we're teenagers and we don't have enough common sense not to do stupid stuff like this, it was nighttime. It was like 9, 10 o'clock at night. It was dark out. We got off the plane, ran downstairs through the gates, got on the taxiway, the ramp, ran across the taxiway, and came up from underneath, and we're first in line for non-RAVs next airport. Welcome to the 1970s. And after we'd been there a few minutes, all the other ones showed up and stopped and looked at us like, how did you beat us over here? And that's just one little example of the kind of stuff you would do as a kid in the 70s, because we didn't have smartphones or DVD players. They didn't have TVs on the wall. It was just you're staring at the wall. And teenagers don't do well unless they have some form of entertainment. And we used to find it. And one other little interesting thing that happened, there's a shuttle flight that runs between Reno and Las Vegas. It's a 737, and it just over back. It's not even an hour flight. They took out the 737. They took out the first class cabin, and back then they did what was called cattle car seating, and I don't think they do that anymore. And a cattle car is just sit down. They don't care what, just sit. And the ticket was plastic. It was like a little plastic sheet. They would hand it to you, and you'd get on the plane and hand it to the flight attendant. And they go sit. And then the plane's leaving at 10:42, which means at 10:42 the plane's backing away from the hangar. And if you're from the airport, if you're up walking around, they're barking at you, sit down, which worked because the plane's always left on time. And again, running space available, we were the last two people on the plane, and we sat right up in the front. I mean, like right up the walls, like right here in front of you. And there was some old guy in the window, and the two seats were available. And we plopped down, and we took off. And this is back in the good old days when they would give you something to eat or drink. You'd have to pay for it. So the flight attendant would come around and go, what'd you like? Orange Coke, whatever. And she pulls up next to me. My brother gets this, I get that. And the old guy next to me says something. And my brother and I just froze as soon as he spoke, because there is nobody in the world who sounds like Don Knotts except Don Knotts. And if you don't know who that is, if you're younger, don't look him up. It's Knotts, Don Knotts. And he has this sound to his voice, and we just froze, and both of us went, and he talked to us. He's a real friendly guy, and I really enjoyed, sitting next to him. I'm checking my clock here. Okay, and I got one last thing I'll throw for my airline experience as a kid. Christmas 1981, my brother and I went to meet up with my father, and we went to London. We went to England on a Christmas vacation, just to check the place out, be tourists. We're out of Colorado, so there was a flight direct Denver to London. It was called the Londoner. Got on the flight, went over, did all the touristy things, and it was over the Christmas holidays. So, anybody who's been in an airport in the Christmas holidays knows what a nightmare that can be with bodies. I don't know if we were non-ravs or paid for tickets, but we had a seat on those planes. And we're coming back and waiting to get on the plane to come back between Christmas and New Year's. And there is, like every week, every holiday, like Christmas, it's just walls of bodies, just people everywhere, and there's nowhere to sit. They're just, it's just the holidays. I ended up walking across to the other side, and I sat against the wall, just on the ground, on the carpet, and I was within about 5 feet of a girl, roughly my age, dark-haired girl, and I mean, we're just sitting there, we got nothing to do, and I said, hey, how you doing? And she started talking, and she was all bummed out because she's from Minnesota, and while they were on vacation, their family was moving, and their house was being packed up, so of course she's not going to see her friends, and that's at that age when that's really a big deal. And we sat there and talked for quite a while, and then it was time to leave, and I had to go back across the way. I said, hey, see you later, and got on the plane, and we flew back to Colorado. My mom picked us up at the airport. We were living in Fort Collins, a big town up north, real nice place, and we were attending a very small private school at the time. And whatever grade you were in, if you were a sophomore, all the sophomore kids were in one class. You were all together. There was not another sophomore class, so there's like 30 people in this sophomore, junior, senior, freshman. You're all in. I was in 7th grade at the time. I was junior high. And we finally get back from the holidays. Everybody's excited. Hey, where'd you go? What'd you do? And we're sitting around talking. I was in our first period class, which was a math class. And I'm sitting over on the left side, and I'm talking to somebody over here. And okay, the teacher goes, everybody simmer down. We're like, whatever, we're all in. Teenagers. Okay, we have a new student in class. I'll give you 3 guesses. There was a red-headed guy from Kansas. There was a blonde-haired girl from Washington State. Or it was a dark-haired girl I had a conversation with on the other side of the planet 4 or 5 days ago. You throw it out there. What are the odds? Her name was Ann, by the way. We're both looking at each other going, do you guys know each other? Yeah, we met. That was the strangest thing that ever happened to me involved with the airlines. And I don't know, that, driving around out here all the time with your brain just drifting around, thoughts like that pop up. I don't know whatever happened to her. She was funny. Oh, well, that's just old guys reminiscing. This is Expediting with Lucy. I'm out.